But then he asks her if he can give her number to a friend of his named Christian. Christian would love to have her number, like, for business reasons. And because she's trying to become a model and Jared's, like, super interested in her modeling career, she thinks, sure, give my number to Christian. If it's for work and stuff, sure. It ain't for the kind of work Mama wants you to be doing. Christian calls her up incessantly. And he also calls her from a hidden number. So she's never really sure if it's Jared calling or Christian calling because they both call from hidden numbers. So she always picks up, but then, dang, it's Christian. And Christian is calling her being like, hey, you know what? I think that you'd be great for videos I want to make. You can only imagine what. He goes on to describe, like, I've got scenarios where you'll be in the shower with 6 guys. I mean, like, just, we won't even get into it. But he's basically asking her, would she like to do some work in that genre? Why in the world would she want to? We'll make it real nice. We'll make it real good. It'll be, like, fancy and luxurious. What is fancy and luxurious about being in a shower with 6 different guys attacking me? I'm sorry, do we need to redefine fancy and luxurious for you big bozo? Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Gia Denise, and today we're going to talk about the documentary that just came out on the BBC entitled Jared Leto, Hollywood's Dark Secret. Now, this documentary isn't available in the US, but if you change your VPN, you can watch it. I don't know if you need to after I tell you what the documentary is about. It's not like one of those documentaries that's full of information that we didn't necessarily know about Jared. In fact, on this channel, I did a deep dive on him. And not only the fact that he's been combing the entire globe for women who are underage so that he can exploit his fame and use his power against these young girls while he, a man in his 40s, is preying on women who are 17 years old. But also, when we talked about him in the past, we talked about the fact that he may legitimately be running a cult, like a religious cult. This documentary doesn't get into that, so if you're interested in that side, we have talked about that on the channel. But this was a really interesting documentary in that it talked to various survivors of this abuse and got their stories. What's interesting about Jared is he is at the highest echelons of fame in Hollywood. He is the elite of the elite. He has had major success in every single medium that he has put his hands to. He's a major movie star. He has an extremely successful band called 30 Seconds to Mars, which, interestingly enough, he's focused his attention on bringing that band to full fruition in Europe, where the underage laws are much lower than they are here in the US. And he's also an entrepreneur. He's also a major name associated with different fashion brands. So this is a guy who, as far as the elites go, he has his hands in all of the pies. And because of the talent that he has, there seems to be a vested interest in not maiming his reputation by talking about this very unfortunate side to who he is as a human being. Because a lot of people's jobs depend on his success. Everybody who tours with him, the crew, the other bands who open for him, they know about his behavior. If they sound the alarms, there goes their income. Movies he's on, when they see him interacting in really questionable ways with different fans who come up, let's not say too much, he is the main name on this movie. So we'll just turn a blind eye. Our jobs depend on it. Same thing with fashion houses, where he has been known to prey on the models at these big fashion houses. We'll get into that as the documentary goes on. But this is a person who, because he's had so much success in all these different spheres, his name is attached to the success of many other people. And so perhaps that's why he's managed to slip under the radar time and time again. He's also really good at realizing that if he just shuts up, the news cycle will do their best to hide his crimes for him, because they need to get on to the next story. They also don't want to get sued. So if they spend too much time on these allegations, what could that mean for them? They'll put it out there, but they're not going to continue to try to get to the end of the story. They'll let it fizzle. So this documentary, which was made by the BBC and put together by a documentary maker named Jessica, she relied initially on the findings of a woman named Elena Clavarino. And Elena had written an article for Air Mail all about Jared Leto and the fact that in Hollywood he has this huge reputation of being this absolute wolf, going after girls who are always underage and significantly underage. There will be stories today of a girl who was 14 years old when she encountered him, and he tried to get her backstage with him in the presence of her mother. But we're also going to talk about girls whose parents did know what was going on and they sanctioned it. So having your mom next to you didn't necessarily mean that he thought that he had to mind his P's and Q's, because in his experience, that hadn't always stopped him. So this girl named Elena blew the story really wide open as far as the public was aware. For decades, people have known that Jared was an absolute predator, but the public wasn't super aware of it. And Elena had written the story, and that's kind of what kicked off this documentary as well, because when the story she writes goes global and then fizzles, this documentary maker, Jessica, thought, I think we can do better than just to let this guy keep going. So that ends up being the catalyst for this documentary. But Elena's initial article came from the fact that she followed this girl on Instagram. The woman's name was Allie Teals. Allie is a DJ, and she has a pretty big following. And she had reposted on her Instagram stories a post that she had made in 2012, where she had said, "You're not really in LA until Jared Leto tries to force himself on you backstage at an M83 show, in a kilt and a snow hat." She was 17 years old at the time when she had encountered Jared that night at that show. And when she posted this, she got tons of messages of all these other women explaining and describing and reporting that they had had similar situations with Jared. And these girls writing in and sending Allie DMs about their personal experiences ranged from inappropriate interactions to full-on assaults. So Allie, as she's receiving these DMs, she starts posting all of these DMs into her story so that other people can follow along. She's not the only one who's getting to see all these women's confessions. She's posting this for the world to see. Now, Elena, the author of this article that kind of blew the lid off of this, is watching the story unfold as it's happening. She's refreshing Tilly's story, just flabbergasted at the volume of responses she got from women who claim that they had similar experiences. So Elena follows some of these leads, contacts some of the women who were in Tilly's DMs, and she starts asking these women, would you mind talking for a story? Could I get you to tell me about your actual experience? Can I get more details? Numbers of them respond. She's able to get enough responses to write an article, which she does. And this story takes off, and it's going around the globe, and everyone's talking about it. Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? And as if you'd ever worked with him, yes, you knew. You knew completely how he operated. He never tried to hide it. I think that's the thing that's so surprising about all of this, is the fact that this was always done in the broad open, where everybody and literally their mama could see what was happening. And he just kind of like, whatever, what I want, I'm going to have. We are all very familiar with the infamous sell your soul to the devil and you can have all you want Hollywood story. It used to kind of be like a joke, but now more and more people are coming out and being like, yeah, I was approached. Yes, I was approached. Yes, I was told to do this thing and then I could have whatever I wanted. We've heard this story numerous times. Jared's fame and fortune in every realm he touches feels to me almost supernatural. Because, well, he's like an okay actor. There are people who think he's like the best. I think he's okay. He's definitely not the worst actor, but, I also wouldn't think that he's like the most handsome guy. He's not an ugly person. His eyes are very piercing and blue, so they're unusual. So you find his appearance kind of arresting. But what's going on with his nose? In certain lighting, he's okay. But what about this picture? Ladies, would any of us stop for this guy? Do you know what I mean? There are times when he has looked like an utter street rat. And yet people are like, he's so handsome. And what is this glamour magic? It's like, what? Are we okay? Could we see with our eyes? Can we feel with our hearts? Do our souls recognize that this person is not attractive? Anyway, for whatever reason, he has had incredible success. But it also makes me wonder if, because he just literally cannot seem to put a foot wrong when it comes to fame and fortune, does he just feel protected that he can just do whatever he wants in the open, knowing that he's never going to get caught because he has the sanction of the devil? You know, when the devil is your literal wingman, what can't you do? You know, so he's just over here acting a absolute fool. Everybody's watching him doing it. Everyone's like, oh, that guy's gross. No one stops him. And as we'll go on to talk about the 5 accusers who come out and the 2 people behind the scenes who were also interviewed for this documentary, this person's pattern of behavior has never changed. But neither has anybody's response to his behavior. Until now. Finally, somebody's coming and doing something. Well, anyway, Elena writes the article. It goes viral. It's spinning around the world. To such an extent that Jared, who was about to be doing a Disney movie and was going to be the big face for the Disney movie, Disney now had to do some crisis talks. Like, how are we going to deal with PR with this guy? Because how are we going to put him out front and center when everybody is coming forward with stories about how when they met him in an autograph line, or they got to meet him at an event or a concert or whatever, anytime he seems to come in contact with the public, somebody's coming away from it used and abused. What do we do? So there was this sense that, like, okay, finally Jared's going to be called to account. You know, all these women for decades have been posting online their experience. Like, that's the other thing. This is not like in the shadow and then Tilly said something and then everybody started to come forward. There was a collection of stories in one spot on Tilly's Instagram page, but the I was groped by Jared, there's an enormous amount of women who have content about how Jared tried to take advantage of them. Stories everywhere, Instagram reels everywhere, comments all over X. I mean, there's tons of people. Now you could say, well, this just sounds like a bandwagon to me. It sounds like some people like wanted to get attention and everybody else wants to say they were groped by Jared. This girl's deciding, you know, how do we really know? And there's some truth to that. Maybe these are just people globbing on. I mean, how hard is it to be like, yeah, I ran into him at the autograph line too, and he told me I was really pretty, but I was only 15. I mean, how do I know that really happened? You know, so perhaps there is a percentage of people making false claims because it's kind of a popular genre online. Tell me your Jared story. But there's enough people on the other side of this who have seen him behaving this way. Crew members, band members, people who've worked for the band, who have seen the way he navigates specifically the spaces where the young girls are enamored by him and his rock star status. That's really where he gets all his girls. There's enough people reporting that they have seen with their own eyes the kind of behaviors that these girls online are describing, that I think that we can believe that this is how he operates in the world. Also, just look at him. I mean, so when the story falls apart and nobody really cares anymore about the story because the news cycle must carry on, and when Elena's article is kind of pushed to the wayside in favor of other news, and of course Jared's got PR people spinning their magic and placing news stories in the media so that people talk about that instead of the fact that he's a big old pedo, there's this sense that the balloon is burst. Like, okay, well, big old wet blanket on our parade. That came to naught. So then Jessica decides, no, we're going to keep digging here. So Jessica, the documentary maker, decides that she's going to find more women who will talk, and will talk on camera. 5 different women come and accuse him in this documentary, as well as someone that goes by the name Simon, who talks about his time with Jared, and a guy named Brad, who also talks about his time when he traveled with the band 30 Seconds to Mars, which is Jared's band. Both of these people, Brad and Simon, are not seen on camera. They go by pseudonyms, and they also have an actor portraying their words. So the fear that they feel for the reprisals coming their way if their identity is revealed seems to be pretty acute. And what they have to say is really interesting. I thought some of the things they said were the most interesting. Not that the girls' stories aren't interesting too. We're going to talk about what each person had to say. But what those 2 guys had to say, I think, was interesting because it's so objective. They aren't in a place of having been personally wounded by someone, like all of these women are. But they were witness to it, and they did feel upset about what they were seeing. They also feel guilty that they didn't do something in the moment to stop what was happening. And they describe Jared as this person who is incredibly sick, controlling, and really just abusive overall in his tone with other people. Everyone is there to serve Jared. And these girls being flesh for him to fondle is just another part of the way he sees the world. So Jessica starts finding women who will be on the documentary. So let's just jump right into their stories. Accuser number 1 is anonymous. You don't see her full face. She goes by the name Etta. The accusers who show their face, she doesn't give their name. But if you didn't show your face, then you get a pseudonym. Etta was 17 when she met Jared Leto on the steps of the Ford modeling agency. She and her mom had gone in, and she was hoping to be signed as a model. And as they're walking in, her mom sees Jared right there at the front doors. He's on the phone. As soon as he notices them, and he's looking at them, he gets off his phone call and follows them into the agency, where he strikes up a conversation with them. Let me remind you, this man at the time of this incident, 42 freaking years old. Young Etta, 17. Okay. Jared says that he hopes she gets signed, and he would love to get her email address because he would love to send her an invitation to a big party. He won this big award. He's having a party. And it'd be really cool if she could come. Jared, you don't even know her. Why would you invite somebody to your big party? The big award that he won, that he's being evasive about, an Oscar. And his Oscar that he won for his role in the Dallas Buyers Club, where he's playing a trans woman, got him to be really a household name. Like, if you didn't know who Jared was, now you did. So he's kind of like coy about it. Yeah, I won this big award. It'd be cool if you could come. And she's like, okay. She gives her email address to Jared, which is just bananas. Where was her mother this whole time, I ask you? Her mother's the one who saw Jared first and, poked Etta in the ribs and was like, look who that is. So I don't know. Big question mark on Etta's mom. Anyway, he starts emailing her, quickly asks for her phone number. They text for a while. And in the course of this couple of days of texting, she lets him know she's only 16 years old. I misspoke earlier. I said 17. That's not true. She was 16 years old. And so there was no question in his mind that he was talking to a girl who's well under the age of consent. He keeps texting, but quickly he wanted to shift to phone calls because texts, somebody might be able to trace those texts back. But if he calls her, it's less likely, less likely somebody will be able to find out. His assurance that a phone call is less dangerous than a text message just shows that he really is not too afraid about being caught. Like, if that's his big measure of safety, we'll do a phone call so no one can trace this back to me. Hello, man. Ever heard of a recording device? Like, wake the hell up. Anyway, he calls her, but always from a hidden number, private number. She never knows what number he's going to call from, and she can't ever see what it is. He immediately wants to start launching into sexual talk. She's 16 years old. What do you think she's got to say for herself at 16 years old in this sexual genre that you want to talk about, Jared? He seems to think that at the age of 16, she will have worked out for herself all of her sexual interests and kinks, which he wants to know about it extensively. He's also highly preoccupied by her anatomical skills. Can you do this one thing that I've always seen, but only in the genre of pornography? Why would you ask a 16-year-old girl that question? Like, what the literal bleep are you doing, you nasty sicko? But then he asks her if he can give her number to a friend of his named Christian. Christian would love to have her number, like, for business reasons. Because she's trying to become a model and Jared's, like, super interested in her modeling career. She thinks, sure, give my number to Christian if it's for work and stuff, sure. It ain't for the kind of work Mama wants you to be doing. Christian calls her up incessantly. And he also calls her from a hidden number. So she's never really sure if it's Jared calling or Christian calling because they both call from hidden numbers. So she always picks up, but then, dang, it's Christian. And Christian is calling her being like, hey, you know what? I think that you'd be great for, some videos I want to make. You can only imagine what. He goes on to describe, like, I've got scenarios where you'll be in the shower with 6 guys. I mean, like, just, We won't even get into it. But he's basically asking her, would she like to do some work in that genre? Why in the world would she want to? We'll make it real nice. We'll make it real good. It'll be like fancy and luxurious. What is fancy and luxurious about being in a shower with 6 different guys attacking me? I'm sorry. Do we need to redefine fancy and luxurious for you, you big bozo? Anyway, he has the same interests and he wants to talk about the same things that Jared wanted to talk about. So the documentary maker is heard off screen asking her, do you think that this was even a different guy? Or do you think this is just Jared pretending that he's Christian? And it is like, it wouldn't surprise me if that were the truth, because he wanted to talk about the same things that Jared wanted to talk about. Like it was kind of like talking to the same guy. Interestingly enough, the 5 different people that Jessica talked to for this documentary, 4 of those women said that they had disturbing sexual calls with Jared. And 3 of those 4 say that he gave their number to quote unquote friends who would then call them and harass them in similar ways. And they were all of the belief that it was the same person, that it was Jared playing a character. All these quote unquote friends who suddenly wanted to call with the same kind of conversation points were just him hiding behind a character so that in the event somebody hears a phone call, they won't think that it's him. So Etta had not come to this conclusion, but the other 3 had. So it's not completely off the wall that the documentary maker would ask her. At first when she asked, I was like, leading? Let's not lead the witness. But if 3 other people have stated that that's what they thought had happened, I can see now why the documentary maker asked her that question. And it's a possibility, because if this person was afraid at all of being caught, a good way, I guess, to exercise your enormous sickness would be to pretend you're somebody else, so that if the call is recorded, they can't necessarily trace it to you. Although, how did Christian get poor at his number? Well, from you sicko, Jared. So I don't think you've exactly covered your bases, but okay. She says that years later, lawyers contacted her and asked her to sign an NDA. They said that, a lot of people like to talk. So the lawyers were just going around to any girl who'd been in Jared's life and just, getting them to sign an NDA for, legal reasons. There's just no reason to anybody to get into any dicey waters, right? Like, this protects everyone. She said she blew them off the first time and then just stopped answering them after that, so she never signed an NDA, so she's free to talk. How many hours a day and night and months and weeks and years and decades did these lawyers have to work to find all the women to sign all the NDAs? Can you even imagine trying to comb the globe for all the women who would have to sign an NDA? Because this documentary is just going to expose a man who literally is working overtime to find new women to call into his life. I don't even know how he has time to learn a script for a movie, how he has time to record with the band, how he has time to go on tour. This business with him, the girls on the phones, seems to be a 24/7 business for him. To continue, we then are introduced to accuser number 2. We don't have a name for her, but she says that in 2002, she was 17 and she was working at the mall. And this group of guys comes in. One of the guys looked really familiar to her. And the group come over to her. They're talking to her. She shows pictures of herself at this age, at 17, a young 17-year-old. This is not a person who looks like she is, 25. Some teenage girls can make themselves look so much older, No. This looks like a girl who's in high school working at the mall. So the group comes over, she sees Jared, he looks familiar, and she says, you look so familiar to me. And he's like, well, what high school do you go to? And she tells him, and the other guy in the group laughs, and he's like, he's pulling your leg. You know him because he's famous. He's been in movies. He just got off of this whatever movie. I think he was in Panic Room at the time. He was just in Panic Room, and he's about to go on tour. We're a band. We're called 30 Seconds to Mars. We're a new band. And so she's intrigued. This guy's famous. That's so cool. And he wants to talk to me and he wants to hang out with me. So they proceed to just kind of hang around for ages. And then they make plans with her that when she gets off work, why doesn't she come over to Jared's hotel room, and, he'll get ready to go and then they can hang out for the rest of the evening. Well, his hotel was really close to where she worked. So she meets him at his hotel thinking that they'll he'll get ready and then they'll go out for the night and it'll be a really cool story. Like the time when she got to hang out with a really famous guy. Who's going to turn that down, right? And it was flattering that these guys wanted to hang out with her. So she leaves work and goes to what he said was a hotel. It's no hotel. It's the seediest motel she's ever seen. But she's not too worked up about it because she doesn't plan on staying there. She's just going to wait for him to get a shower and then they can go. She goes into his room and he's, chit-chatting with her, pulling his shirt off, being like, hey, I'm going to jump in the shower. I'll be right out. And then, we'll go do some things. We'll go get some food or whatever. He's in the shower and he calls out to her real casually, hey, come in here so I can talk to you while I'm in the shower. This is all very intriguing, So she walks into the bathroom. Well, we can all see the way the wind blows, right? As soon as she walks into the bathroom, he pulls back the shower curtain, then he wants to make out with her, then he wants to assault her, forcing her hands on him in ways that she is not prepared for. In ways that nobody is prepared for. So after she realizes in that moment, I have made a colossal mistake, she begs off and says, it's time for me to go. I'm going to go. He's like, wait a minute. Gets out of the shower, grabs a towel, wraps himself in the towel. He goes and checks the hallway to make sure nobody is around and no one will see her leave. After looking up one way and down the other of the hallway, he ushers her out, sends her on her way. The sad thing is that like so many of the other people who are going to talk in this documentary, this poor girl blames herself for this. Did she show a lack of wisdom? Yes. But when you're 17, you just don't understand about the wolves out there. This guy is hanging around with you, seems really normal when you're at the mall, And, you are fun. Why shouldn't he want to hang out with you? You're a good time. So when he invites you to go and hang out with him later, you don't think to yourself, well, this person wants to take advantage of my youth. You're just thinking, well, he just thought I was fun. And I probably am fun. So she goes, but she blames herself for it. And she said that not until recently did it ever occur to her that he was at fault for that. Now, when she got home after leaving in utter shame and embarrassment, even though he's the one that ruined things, she gets home and she Googles Jared Leto and finds out that this man is in his 30s at the time of the incident. And she's just shocked. I mean, how did this even happen? But she buries it and thinks, I'm not going to think about it anymore. But for most of her life until recently, she's always blamed herself, thinking, well, it's what I deserve for being dumb. When you're like in your teens, I don't know, some of you guys out there probably had like a backbone of steel. Anybody tries to take advantage of you, you're going to say no. But I remember being this age. Let me tell you something. I would have been taken advantage of right, left, and center had anybody decided to wander into my life and take advantage of me. I just, honestly, when I think back, I've mentioned this before. I remember one time I used to work at Banana Republic when I was in high school. When I was 17 or 18, I worked there, and I would work in the men's section, and there would be this guy who would come in all the time. That guy was definitely in his 30s, and he would just flirt with me endlessly. And I remember him telling me that he wanted to buy me a birthday present because I'd mentioned my birthday was coming up as I'm standing there folding t-shirts. And he's like, I'd love to buy you something. Where did he want to buy me something from? Victoria's Secret. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, sickos abound, right? And I just remember being like, oh, that's strange. He never really did. I managed to wiggle out of that one, though I don't remember how. I have no remembrance of how that all worked out and how that ended. I know that I never saw him outside of him coming and hanging around. But he had found me on like MySpace and then found me at work. And at the time, I just remember being like, this is all very strange and uncomfortable, but how odd. But I also was young enough to not be scared of this the way I should have been. I just never thought anything was going to happen to me. Luckily, it didn't. But my whole point is, when you're young, the alarm bells do not ring because you don't know where this could end. You're just like, this is really strange. Well, this is like a lot of attention that I'm not used to. Nobody else has ever said anything like this to me. Thank God that the guy kind of like skedaddled. I don't know. Maybe the manager at Banana Republic said something to him. I don't know, but he stopped coming in. Or maybe the Holy Spirit was standing at the doorway with a flashing sword. I don't know, but he stopped coming around, and I never was bothered after that. But when you're 17, you just aren't scared enough of what's out there. And I don't blame this poor girl for going to the hotel room. I mean, I wish she'd had parents who would have told her not to do that. I think a lot of 17-year-old girls would know not to go to the hotel room of some guy they don't know. But Jared doesn't always look like he's as old as he is. I'm not surprised she didn't realize he was in his 30s. When he was in his 30s, depending on the amount of facial hair and kind of like what look he was going for, he could look very young himself. I can imagine how she thought like this, rocker guy was like maybe in his 20s or something. And, when you're 17, you think you're so much older than you are. So I can see how it got here. She didn't do a wise thing, but she certainly is not at fault for the fact that he pulled back the shower curtain, grabbed her hand, and made her do unspeakable acts with him, Okay, let's move on to accuser number 3. This girl was assaulted in the view of her mother. Yet did that stop Jared? No. Sicko continues, the sickness runs through his veins. It's the very air he breathes. He is at a concert. Young accuser number 3. We don't know her name. She says that when she was 17 years old, she was, trying on different personalities, and she decided she was going to kind of land on this rocker chick. She wore fishnet stockings and dyed her hair different colors, and she was really kind of going for a tough image. And in her drive to really embrace this personality, she had stumbled upon 30 Seconds to Mars because they were blowing up. They had a song on the radio called The Kill, and she listened to it on repeat. She loved this band. It was everything she wanted to embody. She thought it was so cool. So her mom decides to buy her tickets to a show, and her mom goes with her to the show. So they go to the show, and there's a break in the show where you, as an audience member, have the opportunity to meet the band, and he'll sign autographs. So people are lining up. She goes up. She's got a T-shirt, and she pulls her T-shirt out, wanting him to sign it, thinking he's going to sign somewhere on it, like maybe the stomach or the sleeve or something normal. Not Jared. Why do something innocent when you can be vile and disgusting? He signs his name across her breasts and then tells her, "You got a great rack." The mom, aghast. She's like, my daughter's 14 years old. And he says to the mother, "That doesn't matter. She's got a great rack." But if that was it, after drawing all over this girl's breasts, he tells his security guard, "Hey, go ahead and take her back to the dressing room. I want to make sure she gets back to the dressing room." Never asks the girl, "Do you want to go?" Or, "Hey, it'd be cool to spend some time with you. You seem like a huge fan." Never tries to hide his intentions from her or her mother by cloaking it in, "I'd love to give you this cool experience of hanging out with the band. We love to meet fans. We'd be nothing without you guys." None of that. Just to the security guard, "Make sure she gets back to my room." Like she's just a piece of meat that was brought up to him in a long line of pieces of meat, and he's going to choose his favorites. They do not stay for the rest of the show. Mom hauls daughter out of there. She says, she did never listen to the band again, and she changed her persona and didn't want to be that metal rocker chick that she thought had been so cool. Like, she was so turned off by his behavior, and her mom was really appalled. So that was the end of that. But, well, I'm glad that she didn't find herself in a hotel room where he is assaulting her in even grosser ways. This story is so important because what it shows is he didn't care if your parents knew about it or not. He didn't care if he did things in front of your mom. He's so far gone that he thought to tell a 14-year-old girl who had braces and was short and looked every bit 14, if not younger. He didn't care if he told her, "You got a great rack." What are you saying that to a 14-year-old girl for? Absolutely heinous and disgusting. Enter the next accuser of the documentary. We're at number 4 now. This girl says that she met him at a concert when she was 17 years old. Actually, she saw him at a concert. She went, and they had gotten backstage passes. 17 years old, super excited, has a crush on the people in the band, especially Jared. So when she's approached by a guy in his 40s, this comedian in his 40s, and this guy tells her, "Hey, Jared has noticed you, and he'd love to get together. He's a little busy right now, but if you could give me your phone number, I'll give it to Jared, and he'll get in touch with you." The girl does. Now, again, a more discerning person would be like, "Well, why doesn't Jared just come over here himself and have a regular conversation? I'm not some piece of... What is this?" But she's young. She doesn't think anything about this. It doesn't occur to her that a 40-year-old man should not be running errands for the rock star over there to come and get your number so that he can call you at some point. Why would he, this rock star who's well established in age, approaching middle age if he was not middle aged at this point of this encounter. Why does he even want your phone number? But at 17, you think, who wouldn't want my phone number? Like, it doesn't occur to you that this rock star would never look at you, or should not look at you if he's well adjusted, and think there's a ideal partner. That 17-year-old girl across the room who's here in the middle of the night. I bet she's got all kinds of potential as a great partner in life. He only wants one thing, but it doesn't occur to you when you're 17. So she gives her phone number to him. Jared does contact her, and later on, they do meet up. She goes on to say that at the second encounter, it was at the Chateau Marmont in LA. And this was a place where she had not darkened the doorstep, but she'd heard about it. She knew about it. She knew that this is where, it was a big hub for celebrities. And she goes up to the table where he is with her friends. He had let her bring one of her friends with her. And so, they sit down, they're having banter, they're talking, they're laughing. It's all very heady and exciting, being included in this upper echelon of Hollywood elite. And somewhere along the lines, the conversation turns to the age of consent. And she says, well, I'm 17. And I know the age of consent is 18. My dad's in law enforcement. So if it's a different age in other states, I don't know about that, but I know about it in California. And in California, it's 18. And he poo-poos it. And he's like, okay, is that supposed to mean something? All right. What a loser. Glad your daddy told you that, but in the real world, if you want to do stuff, you can do stuff. It doesn't really matter. Nobody's really going to come after you. So when they leave Chateau Marmont and go to his house, he gives him a tour of the place. She's put off by the fact that there's two statues from the Clockwork Orange. It's two females, and he has arranged them in a very, very sexual way. But she doesn't have time really to think about that, because then he leads her and her friend into his bedroom. They all sit on the bed and talk for a minute. Then he dismisses her friend and tells her to go wait in a different room. And then the two of them do the deed. In America, that's called statutory rape. If you are coming after somebody under the age of 18, it doesn't matter if you thought they were older. It doesn't matter if they look like they're older. It is upon you to find out what age they are. And if you decide to have sex with somebody who's 17, welcome to the statutory rape charges. That ought to be your full portion. And yet, Jared continues to just wander free. Nothing to worry about here. Jared's just going to keep on doing whatever Jared wants to do, because nobody's going to say boo to him. Sadly, this girl, even though her father was in law enforcement, he had not decided to teach her very much about her own safety. She continues to go back to Jared, and they continue to have different interactions. And one of the things she realizes over the course of these meetups is that he's really interested in her playing the part of somebody who's even younger than she is. So her being 17 is not enough. He always calls her little girl. He tells her at one point when she shows up to the house for one of their little rendezvous, he's in the middle of an interview and says, okay, I can't be there right now, but I want you to go to my room. And when you get there, I expect your clothes to be off. And when I come into that room, I expect you to be naked. So when he comes into the room and she's followed orders, he goes, ooh, aren't you a naughty little girl? And he kept referring to how young she was, calling her Lolita, saying, I'm old enough to be your dad. He loved the idea of being the dad to this young girl. And that wasn't just specific to this girl's experience. That's kind of like a broadly reported thing with Jared, is that he loves the whole Lolita imagery, the older man with the shockingly young girl. He wants sometimes some of the women reported that he wanted them to literally call him daddy, while he would call them his little girl. Why is this monster roaming free? We all know it. We can see it. How many women have to come out and say, I was abused by this man. He took advantage of me. He took advantage of his power, his age. Are these girls making wise choices? 17-year-old Accuser should not have made a return meeting at this guy's house, going to his house in the first place, sitting on his bed, dismissing her friend. Where do you think it was going to go? But she says that at the time she had just gone through this really awkward phase of adolescence where she was so shy and she was always fumbling over her words and she blushed so easily and she felt like nobody ever liked her because she was so uncomfortable with herself. And now this rock star, this movie star, is coming onto her hard, acting like he's obsessed with her. And for somebody who had struggled so much with her self-esteem, to have this guy act like she hung the moon, like him of all people, like he could have his pick of anyone, but he's choosing her. I can totally see how she worked her way into going way too far with this guy and coming back for more of this similar misuse and abuse. Our final accuser, before we get to the people who traveled with him and have some insight from the background, our final accuser is a model. Now, one of the things that Jared loved to do on his tour, which he was focusing a lot of his efforts in Europe, because touring in Europe produced a lot of options since the age of consent is lower and it's just an easier situation to find young girls and, not run any risks. So while he's touring in Europe, one of the things that he would always tell his crew if they were going to be in a big city like Milan, Paris, Berlin, if there was a big modeling agency there, the crew was supposed to make sure that invitations were sent to the female models to please come to his show. He would give them free tickets, VIP passes, and there would be opportunities to party with the band afterwards. So this one young girl, she was in London at the time. This happened in London. And she was a model there with elite models. And the agency told her, hey, we've got all these tickets to 30 Seconds to Mars show. If you want to go, you can go. They've sent VIP passes and everything. You're going to have a great time. So she goes with like 8 other people. It's a good show. She has a good time. They get the VIP treatment. It's fun. Then she's invited to a further event at this after party. And so she goes. And at this point, she's had a lot to drink. Her phone battery is dying. She's used up all the cash that she brought. It's getting late. She really didn't want to go to this after party thing. But Jared's agent was with them. And she keeps being like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You get to party with the band. Like, they really want to hang out with you. You're going to be so mad at yourself if you don't go to this after party. You gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go. So at the after party, she meets Jared. Jared strikes her as so sleazy from the beginning. So that when he asks her, so how old are you? She was 19 at the time, but she lied and said she was 17 because she felt like, okay, I need to place some kind of boundary here. If he hears that I'm underage, he won't make a pass, surely. Surely he will. So after this after party, the one she didn't even want to go to, the agent comes to her again and goes, everyone is still partying. We want to keep this party going. And Jared wants you to come. So the address is at this, so it's such and such a place. So just go ahead and make your way there. We're going to keep that party going. And she's like, I don't know. I'm drunk. I don't have any money left. I don't even know if my phone will stay charged long enough for me to see this night out. Like, I feel like this is probably my time to leave. And over and over and over, the female agent continues to tell her, you're going to give up on this great time? Like, he specifically asked for you. He's the lead singer in this band. Like, you will have such a good time. Don't go home. Like, you can sleep at any time. You can sleep at any night. Why would you go home? Of all nights, why would you give this up? So she's like, maybe you make a good point. So she stumbles in the darkness to find this other address. When she gets there, it's a hotel room with only Jared in it. What? And she's thinking to herself, this is not what I thought this was going to be. I was told the party was continuing and there was going to be other people here and it's just him. And she's feeling frantic. She's no cash at this point. She used up what little she had just to get to this final location, and her phone's dying. It's almost dead. And so she asks him, can I borrow a phone charger? I don't have one. Okay. So she's like, well, I need to leave. I see this is not a situation that I want to be in. So she says, I'm all out of cash. Could I borrow some cash to get a cab home? No. I don't carry cash. So he's of no help whatsoever. refuses to lend her a phone charger, will not give her any cash to get home. She's trapped here in this hotel room. She thinks, I am too drunk to find my way home. I don't know what to do. Maybe I can sober up here and sleep here. So she says, well, could I sleep on the couch here? And he tells her, I don't even want to tell you what he told her because it's just so vile and disgusting. He basically tells her that if she stays the night, she will wake up being attacked in the rear door. This is shocking. So she says, I'm sorry, what? He repeats himself multiple times. He's letting her know, I will assault you if you stay. And I will assault you in horrific ways. So she stumbles out of there, come hell or high water, she'll figure it out. It's better to be drunk on the street than stuck in Jared Leto's room. So she leaves and she makes her way home. She tells somebody the next day about it. They say that she should press charges because he threatened to assault her. But she's like, what are they really going to do? I shouldn't have been there. I was drunk. I shouldn't have put myself in this situation. The same thing all these girls think. I'm the one at fault for the words that came out of his mouth. I'm the one at fault for the fact that he put me in a dangerous situation. I am the one at fault for the fact that he grabbed me and assaulted me. If I had known better, if I had done better, if I had not been so dumb, these are the consequences for being a dumb girl. Since I was dumb, I deserved this. I won't say anything because I'm dumb. The problem is there is some truth to the fact that when you make dumb choices, there are consequences. At the same time, you are not responsible for the fact that somebody said that they were going to brutally assault you in the rear end if you stayed. Like, how is that your fault? Those words came out of his mouth repeatedly and multiple times. How is that your fault? And that's the problem. It's like when we make unwise choices, drinking too much, going and doing things that are against our conscience, we feel like we've given away our power to be indignant about the next things that happen to us. But like those two things aren't always necessarily connected. If you drink and you go out and you stay out late and you go to places that burn your conscience, yes, there are bad things that can happen, but you still are allowed to be upset that the other person treated you that way. It's not mandatory that, I chose to drink too much and I went out and I did this thing. So now it's mandated that I be physically assaulted. I willingly chose to be physically assaulted. I wanted physical abuse. I wanted somebody to rough me up. I wanted someone to scare the hell out of me. That was the deal I was making when I got drunk and walked out of the house. Like, you're not making that deal. It could happen. But I think the problem is that, like, as women, it's easier to blame ourselves if we find ourselves in a really bad situation because I can change my behavior. If I blame myself and say this happened to me because I was dumb, then I just will resolve I won't be dumb again. And the likelihood of you finding yourself in really bad places, but you're completely sober in the light of day, drastically reduce. So you think to yourself, well, that is the solution. The way I save myself is not by doing dumb things. You're trying to wrest control from a world where sometimes we just don't have control. And you're trying to make sense of the world and say, oh, if I blame myself, then I can change what I do and I'll never find myself in a dangerous situation again. The documentary doesn't just talk to women who have had bad encounters with Jared Leto. The documentary also talks to a couple of people who worked with the band 30 Seconds to Mars. And like I said earlier, 30 Seconds to Mars just took off and had a huge following, like enormous. It's truly like almost a cult thing. The way people just slavishly go after the band, tattoos of themselves, follow the band everywhere. It's crazy. And there's all these videos of Jared pulling girls up out of the crowd, like to hug on them and to like make much of them. But he's like a real scoundrel about it too. Like there's this one video where he calls this girl out of the crowd and is like, hey, you come here. And then he's like, but before we get started, I need a hug. So the girl gives him a hug. She prolongs the hug. He's like, mocks her for hugging him so long, gets a laugh out of the crowd about it, and then, has some little banter with her and sends her on her way. And it makes me so angry because he acted like she was special. She comes up, she thinks she's special, and then he mocks her for thinking that he cared and embarrasses her. And she's so young, like you just feel so bad for her. And like this clip that the documentary showed, this clip shows somebody who is humiliated in front of thousands and thousands of people. And Jared Leto just wanted to exercise that power muscle of getting some slavish idol worshiper to come on stage, trick her, embarrass her, and send her on her way. It's like he gets off on being this unbelievable, powerful force who can just humiliate and embarrass. Enough of these incidents building up led to people who were in the crew feel gross and disgusting and angry at seeing the way he was treating not just girls he'd bring up, but just women backstage and young girls in the autograph line. And so 2 people came forward and were willing to talk for this documentary. Like I said, you don't see their face, and their voice is not their voice. It's an actor's voice portraying what they said in the interview. But it's still really interesting what they said. There was one guy, his name was Simon. He worked for the band for over a decade. And he said that he remembers a time when the band was recording at this house. They had taken the living room and kind of made it, or one of the bedrooms, and they'd made it into a recording studio. But in his experience with the band, Jared always had like 2 new random girls show up. And the way he would treat them was always that very dismissive, like, I'll take notice of you when I take notice of you. Like, he'd open the door, he'd let them in, he wouldn't make eye contact with them. He'd basically be like, go sit over there. And he might make some dismissive comments like, couple of naughty little girls, aren't you? And then he'd just like go off and do something else, leave them there for 15 minutes kind of waiting. And then he'd circle back around and flirt with them and do whatever it was he was going to do with them. But there was always this sense of, I'm going to make sure that you know your place in this relationship. You're lucky to be here. I'm going to use my power to make you feel small. And the enjoyment was always that power dynamic. So Simon tells about a time when this girl shows up to the house, very young. She was dropped off by her parents. She comes in, Jared takes her to a bedroom. They're back there for an hour, a little under an hour. When they come out of the bedroom, the girl's like, can I get a picture with you? And she tries to give him a kiss on the cheek. He rebuffs her, will not allow any kiss on the cheek. And then when they do take the picture, he is insistent that it looked like this was some kind of casual, platonic, happenstance occurrence that they happened to meet. He does not want it to look like they know each other or anything like that. The picture, very much wanting it to seem platonic and non-committal. Then he like excuses himself, and the girl's just sitting there, and she's got to call her parents and wait for her parents to come and pick her back up. What did her parents think was happening at this house? What the actual hell with these parents who would drop her off like this? You know, and that's what I'm saying. Like, Jared doesn't care if the girl's parents are involved in all this. He has zero care, concern, or fear that he's going to be caught in any of this. It doesn't even seem to cross his mind that he needs to be careful. He's reckless. And why should he care? He's done all of this and nobody cares. Simon said that it really wrecked him, watching that poor girl sit there and wait for her parents to come pick her up. She was embarrassed. She was ashamed. And the entire feeling in the room was of degradation and despair. Because what had just been taken from that girl, God knows, you know? And yet here she sits, waiting for her parents to pick her up after this guy who she thought was really into her definitely could care less and basically just gave her the middle finger to everything they had just done. The other guy that Jessica interviewed for this documentary, who had traveled with 30 Seconds to Mars, said that he worked with them for a really long time. He toured with them, so he went everywhere that they went. He said that when it came to touring with 30 Seconds to Mars, it is a very intense atmosphere. And I've been on the road since I was a teen, and Jared was one of the worst people I have ever worked for in any way, shape, or form. He said that they all saw his behavior and were really grossed out about it. It was like a well-known thing, the way he would prey on very young women. And the younger they were, the more excited he was to get them to his room and to get them backstage and into his dressing room. Brad says, who knows what he was doing with those girls once they were in the dressing room. But if he was going to be this blatant in public, I think we can put 2 and 2 together. Just absolutely rabid for the innocence of all these young fans. The younger, the better. Brad was the one who revealed the business of reaching out to different modeling agencies when they were in big cities. And Brad was the one who said that he felt so gross as he'd watched the crew corralling all these women, knowing that it was just a meat market for Jared to choose from. And it was Brad's testimony that these women would come thinking they were just going to have a good time, and that the band was just reaching out to the agency just, for fun. And they would come and they would regularly be abused. And Brad says that the thing with Jared is you just don't F with him. Which is why both Simon and Brad were so scared to come forward and needed to cover their identity so extensively. Because Jared's a scary person. And if you've seen my video about his cult, and I know it's a cult, this is a person who seems like they are entrenched in the occult, entrenched in Satanism and black magic. It's not just that he is this incredibly perverted person going after young women, which would be enough in and of itself to be horrified. But there's an even darker side to him. And I think that has led to an assurance in his mind that he's safe because he has all the powers of darkness at his command. Of course he doesn't. Of course he's just a plaything and a pawn for the devil. And that's the problem that all these people always have. They always think that, them and the devil are working hand in hand to just live these hedonistic, pleasurable lives where the word no is not in existence in their vocabulary. And they think there will never be a price to pay. They gave their soul, but in return, look at everything else they've gotten. Their whole life is just one long list of all the things they ever wanted. Do you think Jared Leto's happy? Look at his eyes. He looks like the most haunted person I've ever seen. And it's not just because his piercing blue eyes are just like kind of kooky looking. It's because there's something wrong in his face. There's something wrong in his smile. There's something twisted in his eyes. There's something repulsive about him to me. There's something so creepy and slippery and so off-putting to me. And this documentary, which was interesting in the sense that, you got all these different accusers telling their story. It was an hour long. They had two people giving evidence about what they saw, which was not nothing, but this documentary could have gone to so many more places than it did. There's so much more reporting on Jared Leto. Look at any documentary on YouTube. There are people who have done extensive deep dives into the cult of Jared Leto. Extensive deep dives into what he's into, the weird symbolism in the art for his music, the weird iconography that he's attached to, his strange island that he goes to with all these women and they all wear white and he is their messiah. He is so much creepier than this documentary went on. And I think it's horrific that he would sign a 14-year-old girl's shirt across the breast and, say, you got a nice rack. I mean, in reality to who he is, that is quite an innocent story. And it's horrible. But this documentary could have been even more explosive if it wanted to be. All that to say, don't buy a VPN if you don't have one to watch this documentary. The documentary is interesting. It gives color to what we already knew. But it's not an explosive scenario where you think to yourself, but for this documentary, I could have never had any idea. Let me tell you, there's so much more out there. This was interesting. It's been making the rounds. Everyone's been like, have you seen it? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? I've told you everything you need to know. You're welcome to go watch it. If you're already in England, you're good to go. But if you're in America and you're like, I really want to see this, you don't. You don't. It's not stellar. I've told you all the tidbits. It's just disturbing. But it's not like brand new accusations. But for the BBC, we would not know. It's not like that. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I always enjoy hanging out with you. I will see you guys tomorrow for the Friday News Roundup. Now, next week, I am going on vacation with my family, which, let me remind you, when I go on vacation with my family, the background changes extensively. When I'm at my in-laws, I film at a place where everything is black behind me. So I look like I'm talking to you from the dark hole. But that'll be next week. There will be fewer videos next week. Okay, so I'm just letting you know. Fewer videos next week if I see you at all. Definitely during the middle of the week because we're going down to the beach. But for the beginning and the end of the week, I should still see you. I'm not 100% if it'll be a Friday news roundup or if it'll be a Saturday news roundup. But anyway, there will be videos next week, but just fewer of them. So just putting that out there. All right, I'll see you guys for Friday News Roundup. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to the channel, liking these videos, and sharing these videos. I know you guys have been doing that a ton. The channel's had a bit of a jump. So I appreciate everybody who is tuning in and who is supportive and commenting. It means so much. Thank you guys. All right, see you soon. Bye.